So it's my pleasure now to introduce our final speaker for today, and her name is Karen Ross. She has served as Secretary for the California Department of Food and Agriculture since 2011 and has been involved in California agriculture since 1989, when she served as Vice President of the Ag Council of California and then President of the California Association of Wine Grape Growers. Secretary Ross is passionate about fostering the reconnection of consumers to the land and the people who produce their food, and to improving the access of all California citizens to healthy, nutritious, California-grown agricultural products celebrated for their diversity and abundance in serving local, national, and global markets. During Secretary Ross's tenure and now under Governor Newsom's leadership, the department has focused on core functions to protect and promote California agriculture, investing in the department's employees to provide the best service to farmers, ranchers, and consumers, and fostering an agricultural industry that embraces its role as a global leader on everything from the most technical aspects of farming to the broadest environmental imperatives. Secretary Ross has strengthened partnerships across government, academia, and the nonprofit sector in the drive to maintain and improve environmental stewardship and to develop adaptation strategies for the specific impacts of climate change. I can attest to this, as she's been an active member on my Dean's Advisory Council. At CDFA, she has initiated programs that align closely with the goals of the College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences to provide greater opportunities for farmers and ranchers to engage in sustainable environmental stewardship practices through water conservation, energy efficiency, nutrient management, and ecosystem services. And she has worked to provide greater access to farm fresh foods at school cafeterias through CDFA's Farm to Fork program. So please join me in welcoming Secretary Ross to the stage for closing remarks.
So I love the previous panel, and Eric left, darn it. Eric served on the State Board of Food and Agriculture during some of the same time that Helene did, and really terrific to have those kinds of contacts and to have a statewide board that really does, on a monthly basis, provide a lot of good input, a lot of good wisdom from very practical, but also very diverse perspectives, which is one of the most important things to understand about California agriculture. Growing up on a farm and owning part of that farm in western Nebraska, there's just, there are always gonna be similarities, but there's nothing like growing what we grow in California, and with the challenges that we have. So first of all, I just have to say, thank God, or whoever is above, that Abraham Lincoln, in the midst of the Civil War, created the land-grant university system and the National Science Foundation and a few other really remarkable things, because he understood the importance at a time that had so many other things facing him of being able to grow food and to help better grow it, and to do it in a way that was sensitive to that local community. And that's what Agricultural Experiment Station, being a part of that land-grant university, having that strong sense of public service, that what we do is to benefit so many, and talking about impact, which I heard about today, is all I can say is thank you, kudos to all of you. You serve in a very unique position. And it would be hard to name just a few examples of all the ways that you've had impact of actually making California agriculture, it is the envy of the world. And I think it's really important when we talk about California agriculture to start with the diversity of it, which is that almost 80% of our farms are less than 100 acres. And that, like US agriculture, it is a small number at a larger scale that are producing a significant amount of the food. And that's also very true in California. It's also true that the vast majority of those are multi-generation family operations. And the challenge of being able to hand a business down to the next generation and the one after that with the rapidity of changes in technology and consumer knowledge in social media, making everything instantaneous, and changes in food safety and the rise of all the things around that. And most importantly, in a time of climate change and all that that brings to us means what you all do, and especially, it is the research, but especially the next generation that will be there to help us get through the next challenge and the ones after that. But right now, the focus on resiliency and all that that means is absolutely the driver that we think about every day. It is sometimes overwhelming to think about it in the scope of all of it. And not putting anything in a silo is probably the most important thing we can do. It started with Jerry Brown, who was like, go out and smash silos and just solve problems. It was a very lean operation, comparatively speaking, and we didn't have budget. But we used some of the resources that we had, building on the work of this university, this campus, this school, and the AES mission to really build out in the hopes that there would be funding someday for all of our climate smart ag programs, for all of the work that we're doing more than any other country on the globe with regard to reducing methane from livestock, and hopefully, just around the curve, those enteric fermentation solutions, which will be very, very critical, that we invested in a healthy soils program before we knew that there would ever be a real opportunity to scale up, which is the phase that we're trying to be in right now. There are several things to think about. One is just the knowledge of how to do it. And because of all those small farms in particular, but not exclusively, the investment in technical assistance, I call it the translation of the findings for real-world practical application that has to be place-based. Because as my friend, Dr. Jeff Delat, who chairs our environmental farming science panel, says, if you've been on one farm, you've been on one farm. The variables that somebody's doing, the complexity of what they're doing, and just the sheer weightiness of trying to be a small farm operator with all the same regulatory requirements, finding the markets for what that means, all of the things that come with it, and wanting to be the best possible environmental steward with a dream that I too might be able to hand this on to another generation, hopefully in my family, but that it will continue to be a smaller scale operation. I'm very mindful of that because I've spent the last 2 days in Santa Cruz, Monterey, and Salinas, from the smallest of the small to some of the largest, most successful of them all. And I will tell you without a doubt, over this last decade, the attention that is being paid on the farm about adapting to climate change. And for me, the excitement of possibly being part of the solution with mitigation creates huge opportunity. The idea of what soil health means, which I will say, I think historically that was like, well, I'm stopping erosion on my farm. I mean, that was a very obvious one. And yes, I know that my soil health matters, but for many it was, how much fertilizer do I need? I mean, I don't want to boil it down too simplistically, but the fact is every farmer that I've talked to the last 2 days, every farmer, regardless of their size, they are doing experimentation on their own farm around organic practices, how do I reduce inputs? And it's not only because they want to make sure that land will be able to be productive for a few more generations at least. It's also because the consumers who want this being translated to the customers, which are the retailers for the big guys, and directly at the markets for the small guys. The pressure, not just in our US markets or our California markets, but global markets, having traveled extensively the last 2 years, especially from our newer generation, they want clean air, they want clean water, of course, everyone should have the right to that. They really care deeply and have a good sense of what the importance is of biodiversity. This is not just a California trend that will wear itself out. This is very real attentiveness to the world and the place in which we live, and the role that you play in helping farmers which several land trusts talked yesterday about the discovery of landowners as the best trust partners for conservation because they know that land, adjusting to those practices. So I don't want to go on and on and on because I know that Wade talked to you earlier today about nature-based solutions. Tremendous opportunity for us to bring all of this together and to scale it up. I also have to point out the critical importance, because we're the ones that are responsible for keeping the invasive pests and diseases out of the state, but they keep slipping through in this changing climate, and they will continue to do that. The work that we did with the Department of Pesticide Regulation to launch the Sustainable Pest Management Roadmap last year, because every farmer and Western growers is leading the charge on finding more biological solutions. They call it more biology, less chemistry. Again, that's a reflection of where the consumer's coming from, but it's also a reflection of the frustration of farmers that the tools we have are getting fewer and fewer, and they're less and less effective, partly because of a changing climate. So this idea of climate resiliency, starting with the soils, being able to withstand the shocks to the system, matters at all scales across all the landscapes in California. And when we do it together and take the time, as one of the former chiefs of staff said, first of all, let's all sit down and make sure we're accurately defining the problem. And sometimes that takes some time, thank you scientists, to bring us all to a same level of understanding, because many times we go off thinking we're all solving the same problem, and then it's when we come back we don't. And yet, spending the time to do that up front is how we can build more bridges and bring more perspectives to the table to get to better solutions. We cannot afford to do this as one stakeholder at the table, which we traditionally think of as the grower. Even the growers are multiple stakeholders because of the scale and the diversity of what they do. And if there's anything that I would hope that with your science and your understanding and your wisdom you can help us do, is less confrontation and more collaboration. That's what I think is possible. The other thing I wanted to note today is I see that my friend Kim McCoy-Wade talked. I hope she talked about the master plan on aging. Because here's what a remarkable convergence is that is happening right now. When she set out to lead the effort on a master plan on aging, it was about aging in place and being able to do that well. And it was during the process that they discovered what we really care about is healthy aging in every decade of life. That to me is a very transformational thing to think about. That for me is why our investment working with the first partner on Farm to School, starting those lifestyle habits around good nutrition and understanding the connection to food and my performance in the classroom or on the playing field is starting there. We can avoid chronic diseases. We have the tools to do that. And then we can take some of the pharma dollars and put them into agricultural sciences and good nutrition to really further that. The first time the US has hosted a Food as Medicine Summit happened in February. HHS, FDA, and USDA co-sponsored that. I think we're at a unique moment because of the cost of healthcare, which we've talked about for decades, but it's at a tipping point. And the fact is, we need to be making equal investment at the youngest ages so that we don't, not that I want to take it away because I'm one of those. I will be dependent on all of you. We don't want to just save those dollars and spend it at the senior stage of life. We should be investing as early as possible for healthy children, healthy farms, healthy communities. And that's what you all can bring to this discussion. So I want to close because the real reason I drove like a maniac, don't tell the rental car company or the state of California. I went a little bit fast where I could. I'm here to thank Helene. Okay, I was on the search committee, and she wowed a lot of people. But I had friends in New York State. But I texted to see, is she going to be the real deal that it appears she's going to be? And they were like, she would be, but don't you dare. I honestly think that the years you spent at Cornell, working with growers the way that you did, not only brought to UC Davis a renewed commitment to stakeholder engagement and showing up where they are. But the one thing I've heard about you that I admire so much is how much you care for people on campus, starting with the students. So to Helene Dillard, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I do remember that interview where there was a particular wine grape grower that was texting away. And I didn't know he was texting wine grape people in New York State. And I didn't realize that they were so interconnected. And so by the time I was done with the dinner that night, I had all these emails from people in New York going, "What are you doing in California?" Oh, no. So thank you. Karen's been a wonderful colleague, friend. We've done so much together, and I've served on her board. She's served on mine. And I don't know, this is going to be really difficult, stepping down as dean, but I'm going to keep bugging her. I've got a few more things I need her to think about. So again, thank you for your keynote. Thank you for driving like a maniac from Salinas. And I was really worried. I had told everybody she may not make it by 4:45, but she did, so thank you. I do want to thank everyone for a very productive and enlightening day. We had some great discussions today. I want to thank all of the audience, all the folks from out of town, from Sacramento, all of the agencies that were here, the NGOs. You guys were great. I really appreciate all the good questions we got for our panelists. I do want to thank the faculty and the panelists. John Eades and I we're going to retire together, we think, around the same time. And he's done phenomenal work as well. But I do want to thank the committee members who helped really pull all of this off, starting off with Jason Bond, Anne, Melissa, Annie, Karen, Jen, Adrian, Lorraine, wave your arms, all the staff that were involved in putting this together. We really, really want to thank you. We had lots and lots of meetings talking about speakers, panelists, how to pull it off together, and I think you just did a phenomenal job. I want to invite everyone to stay for this reception. We have good California wine, and it's a great opportunity to continue to mingle, network, follow up with people who you'd like to speak to. I hope everybody got to see the posters. They're really amazing. I don't know if the wildlife display is still out there, but that's also pretty amazing. So again, thank you all for coming. It's our very first time doing this, and I've heard several people say, we need to do this again. So we'll think about how to pull off another one. But again, thank you, and please stay, enjoy the food. We have tons of food, and the wine from California. Thank you.